Marian. Kiara, welcome everyone. Welcome to this webinar hosted by Ministry of Awesome, Orion and RRK about the Orion Energy Accelerator. I'm Jacob Burgess. I'm the head of innovation for Ministry of Awesome, and I'm the program head for the Orion Energy Accelerator. The Orion Energy Accelerator was launched over a month ago by Orion and Ministry of Awesome, and a week ago, we extended the deadline because we were welcoming in our new partner, which is RRK, the New Zealand's Energy Research Centre. A lot of work has gone into bringing this program to you. Our team, Ministry of Awesome and Orion, has been working together since November last year on developing this program, identifying the problem themes, and putting this program together. So the whole point of today's webinar is that to introduce the Orion Energy Accelerator and give you the chance to ask any questions about your application, really understand why Orion as an energy sector leader, as our energy distributor, is driving this program, what is RIRK's contribution as the New Zealand Energy Research Centre, and how Ministry of Awesome is supporting this program and facilitating this. Most of you have expressed interest, have registered, or have already applied for the program. So this will also be an opportunity for you to understand, okay, what are things you need to factor in while you are putting your application together so that you have the best chance of success in selection. So today we'll hear from 4 members of our program team. First up, we'll have Marian. Marian is the CEO of Ministry of Awesome. Marian will talk about this unique opportunity, which is an accelerator program, which a major corporate is backing. So Marian brings her experience in supporting startups through Ministry of Awesome. She has good deep experience of working with large corporates as well. And as a startup, what we always miss while we are doing the Mahi is that connection to industry, and we have created this opportunity. We have brought industry, which could be your potential first customers, and paired up with startups. So Marian will talk about that, how unique this opportunity is, how best you can utilize it. And then we'll hear from Paul Duvall, the general manager of Orion, who is also the entrepreneur, the expert in residence for the program. And then we'll hear from Brooke Marshall, who is the other expert in residence from RRK. So now over to Marian. And so Marian brings a lot of experience working in startups, supporting startups, advising startups, and also she has extensive experience working with really large industry players, the likes of Universal Studios or Discovery across America and Europe. So she will talk about why Ministry of Awesome leading us, what is our capability in commercializing startups, and what that actually means, and what is the opportunity for startups in New Zealand. She will also talk about how partnering with a large industry player like Orion and RRK can accelerate a startup's journey. So over to Marian.
Thank you, Jacob. Kia ora, everybody. So as Jacob said, I'm Marian Johnson. I'm Chief Exec at Ministry of Awesome. And I'm going to go ahead and start off by sharing my screen with everybody. So if someone could just give me a thumbs up as soon as you can see it, I would really appreciate that.
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. Let me just move this window aside. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, as Jacob has mentioned, is I just want to give some context to the work that we are doing together, and what Ministry of Awesome, what our role is in the national ecosystem, and why we've partnered up with Orion on this project. Sorry for the quick rewind. I obviously had it started on the wrong screen. So I'm going to make the assumption that many of you aren't familiar with Ministry of Awesome. We are a startup hub who are headquartered in Christchurch, Canterbury, and essentially we're a force for New Zealand startups and innovators. And the reason that we do what we're doing is because 90% of New Zealand's new job growth is going to come from startup. And that figure remains the same across the entire OECD, and that's 90% of new job growth comes from startups. That means that innovators and startup founders founders are a very important group for any growing economy. So we also believe that a key focus of our COVID recovery must be on that top of funnel activity. We don't have enough startup founders in New Zealand. We don't have enough talent who are thinking as big and ambitiously as we'd like them to be. And so our role at Ministry of Awesome is to make startups a thing. And in New Zealand, we are at the very early stage of the development of our startup and innovation ecosystem, which means that we're at activation phase. And so there's three things that we spend most of our time doing at Ministry of Awesome. The first one is that role model storytelling, that whole piece around making startups a thing. And the second one, which is what we're doing here with the Orion Accelerator, is around identifying talent and building capability, creating some connectivity, and dropping in investment pipelines. And then the third thing, which is also what we're doing here, is making sure that we're building entrepreneurial density. So we found the goal threads in the pipeline, and we're making sure that we put them together with the key players that are going to help them succeed. And one of those key players are New Zealand corporates and large organizations like Orion. So around doing, making startups a thing in job one, we have so many meetups. On Thursday, we have Startup Breakfast Club, where we're going to be talking about startup culture. We also have coffee and jam. And no matter where you are, we do broadcast almost everything live on Facebook. So feel free to jump into our Facebook page and see what you might have missed if you can't attend locally. So that's Startup Breakfast Club and Coffee and Jam. We also have an upcoming event later this year called Electrify Aotearoa, which is all around driving the pipeline of ambitious female founders. The second thing, which is around identifying talent and building that capability, we have this incubation program at Te Ohaka, and we have been incredibly successful in the first 2 years that we've been working on the program, with just a few extremely early stage startups, really at minimum viable product, coming all the way through to raising capital, creating new jobs, and being involved in national and international accelerators. And then job three is around creating that perfect circle. You've got all of your fabulous founders, and then you generate those sort of moments of serendipity of bringing those teams together with key players like the corporates, like the regional government, like investors, and so on. An example of this is the competition that we just finished with foodstuffs in the North Island and South Island. Another example is the Health Tech Challenge. And what we want to say to everyone is that everyone seems to look to other people to be the startup founder, and everybody, we think it's actually you. You're either the startup founder, or potentially you're the person who's going to contribute to the startup, either as an investor or as a mentor, or coming on board as first team members. So a little bit about the Orion Energy Accelerator. Essentially, the opportunity here is really immense. You've got this, this organization that it has an incredible talent base, a great deal of experience in the energy sector, who are creating an open invitation to innovate. They feel very responsible for creating positive impact in their community. And this accelerator is an opportunity to pair with Orion and also with Ara Ake, who are one of the newer players in the whole government sector, who are going to have an enormous impact on the future of our energy pipeline. And it's an opportunity to work very closely with them and then create a future for your potential innovation, potentially working under their wing as a result of the accelerator. So I think I'm going to hand over to you now, Jacob, to hand over to the next speaker, who can provide some more detail about the program itself.
Thanks, Marian. And as you can see, I've decided it's a bit too cold, so I definitely need a blazer over us. Slightly cold in Christchurch today. Talking about cold Christchurch, so the people who are actually, keeping us warm is our electricity distributor. So we have Orion as the primary driver of this program. So Orion owns and operates the electricity distribution network across central Canterbury, over around 8,000 square kilometers. The Orion groups also includes Kinetics, which is a wholly owned subsidiary subsidiary and group in this program. And so we have Paul DeWall. He's the general manager of Orion joining us today. And Paul will also act as an expert in residence for the program. So that means Paul will actually act as an advisor for all the 11 startups who are selected to the program over the duration and really supporting them. And Paul is a really experienced business leader, and he's also a board member of the Canterbury Employees Chamber of Commerce, among other things. So over to you, Paul, about to talk more about why Orion is doing this and how they're looking forward to supporting ambitious startups.
Thanks very much, Jacob. Hopefully people can see me okay, and hopefully the screen has shared okay too. So the Orion Energy Accelerator, what I thought I would do to kick this conversation off this afternoon is actually to talk first a little bit about Orion and our new group strategy. So it's summarized here in this tile diagram. And about a year ago, we were doing some work to think more carefully about our future. And the reason, or one of the reasons this work came about, was because Orion had been through a period of time where post-earthquake, it had had to do a substantial rebuild of the network across, particularly across the city, but also across Canterbury, more widely. And with that work finished, it was time for us to sit down, have a jolly good think about what our future really was and what it was we needed to be doing in our community. And at the same time, of course, we were challenged by a climate crisis. And so we were able to bring those things together and produce a new purpose, powering a cleaner and brighter future, in particular for the community we serve, but also for New Zealand. And potentially there might be some leadership opportunities that could come out of something like the Accelerator program itself that end up being global. I'm going to just talk through this diagram a little bit. I'll start down towards the bottom, actually. The foundation is really what I've been talking about, and that is that we will aspire to have New Zealand's most advanced electricity network, because actually as an enabler of many other things, what we need to do is make sure that the network itself is in that, I guess, industry leading position, and that we haven't lost sight of the fact that actually that underpins everything else it is that we need to do. We've talked about some enablers across the bottom. I won't focus too much on those today, but there are some things that we've identified in our organisation that we would need to create some shifts in if we're to deliver on the strategy. But I will talk about the impacts we're looking to create. So we're looking to create strategic leadership. So not only in our region, but more widely across New Zealand, and certainly some leadership in the industry and the role we play. We think a lot about regional prosperity, particularly as a local business. It's important that we think about the opportunities that we're creating in our own region, and in particular that prosperity, which will lead to livability and a great place to live in our region. That's important to us. And that we focus also on sector transformation, knowing that the whole electricity sector is a sector that is transforming, and we need to be playing some leading role in helping change aspects of that. And that brings us to the particular strategic themes that we've decided to work on at the moment. The first one's around reimagining the future network. For those of you who are working on innovations, you'll realise that many of those innovations that we'll see in our environment will occur towards the edge of the network. And so we're thinking carefully about what our future network looks like, and in particular, how we can understand in detail what's happening on our network, right down to the individual streets and feeders that are coming out of transformers on some of those some of those areas. So getting much more into monitoring our low voltage network, whereas in the past we might have focused more on some of that heavy core and understanding that. The future is very much about a low voltage network and what happens on the edge. Knowing that we have to be much more customer inspired, and equally we have to be much more customer led. So we're moving towards an environment of much more deeply understanding our customers, and in particular thinking about how we co-create the solutions of the future with our customers. We think about how we lead and grow in our region and in our industry. So there's a number of things that Orion already has some wonderful strengths in. And I'll give you one example. We're very good at that long run asset lifecycle management. We have assets that go into our network. They could stay there for 50 years. In some cases, we've got assets that have stayed there for 100 years, and we're good at managing them. So as an example, is that an opportunity we can take into other sectors? We need to think about how we accelerate capability. And I've mentioned that transforming the sector and bringing capability to the sector is important for us. So we won't lose sight of the fact that we have a role and a responsibility to help accelerate that capability. And of course, if we're going to power a cleaner and brighter future for our community, we'll have a strong focus on how it is we go about powering the low carbon economy. Now, when we put all of that together, one of the things we realize as an organization quite quickly is that we can't do this alone. We don't have all of the ideas, but what we know is that if we work with others and invite some innovation into this strategy, we're likely to be able to achieve some greater outcomes and achieve those outcomes more quickly. And that led us to thinking, actually, how could we do something with Ministry of Awesome, and now delightedly with Araki, and to get the Energy Accelerator underway. So why now? I've already talked a little bit about why now, but essentially you'll understand that we are in a climate crisis, and you'll possibly understand that the electricity sector has a really key role to play in transitioning to a low emissions future. And in some cases, certainly in New Zealand, more so than many other countries, where we're very fortunate about some of the forward thinking. When we go back many years, we're lucky to have a lot of electricity in New Zealand that is already generated from renewables. And in some ways, that's a privileged position to be in. So we have to think about how we use that carefully in this climate crisis. And so throughout the program, we want to identify ideas and solutions in the energy sector. We want to create opportunities for Kiwi startups to engage with Orion and now partners and the Ministry of Awesome with what we can bring to the conversation. We want that forum for collaboration, and as some of you will have worked in this space before know, it's actually one of the really important factors is that the forum gets together and people who are doing the same thing do share some ideas and inspirations, etc. So bringing that together is important. And we'd like to think that we do get to the point where we're supporting some commercialization and accelerate the development of some of these great ideas for New Zealand. And it may be, and we've signalled, that actually some of that support from commercialization and potentially equity positions in the future might come as a part of the Orion engagement. And I mentioned we want to improve sustainability through encouraging those affordable solutions that can tackle climate change and reduce emissions. So I'm going to talk just briefly about some of the headlines. If you need this detail, you'll find it all online. It's part of the booklet too. But I just headline some of the areas that we think that innovations would be useful. I would say that before I start this piece of work that if you were thinking about entering and enrolling yourself in this opportunity at the moment, what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't let something you see in the next few slides prevent you from making that. We put these ideas together by bringing together a few smart people working on a few ideas and innovations. But the one thing we know for sure is that we don't have all of those answers. So please don't let these slides stop you putting forward a great idea or getting in touch with us, just one of us, including myself, if you wish, to test that idea. We're really interested in the future of energy. So we've got to think more about what are other forms of energy. And as I've said here, we're particularly interested in electricity, but not restricted to electricity. So please don't think that we're just thinking about electricity. Many of you know that e-mobility and EV charging is a very big part of our future, particularly when it comes to decarbonising transportation. So we're interested in innovations in that space, including how we might go about charging EVs. Energy storage. One of the things we have at the moment is, our areas and our country has a demand profile for energy. One of the things that will be useful in the future is how we smooth some of those demand profiles out. So thinking about opportunities for energy storage to do that, there are things that may well be of interest. Smart home and commercial construction. These ideas come from the fact that one of the organisations we support locally is Community Energy Action. And one of the things we know is that it makes really good sense to get people in energy efficient homes and buildings before you start many of the other energy conversations with them. And so through Community Energy Action, we support the insulation of homes. So there may be some ideas in insulation, construction, smart home ideas that actually make for healthier homes. Smarter customer engagement. I mentioned at the start when I was in the strategy that one of the things we have to do during this period is get a deeper conversation and a deeper engagement with our customer. In many cases, they'll have ideas, they'll have technology, they'll want us to engage those and make that happen on our network. How do we build that engagement with them? And how do we get, using energy carefully to kind of become a bit sexy that people actually want to get engaged in that conversation? And smart grids. In the future, there's more likely to be ideas about how communities work together with various forms of generation, storage, and form those grids. And this may be particularly relevant to some of our more remote communities or some of the modern communities we'll build inside cities. So what are the ideas in that space? And finally, and certainly not by any means the least, but just straight up energy affordability. One of the things we recognise in our own community is that there are a number of people in our community that are energy poor, and finding ways to help and innovative ways to help them understand how it is that they can make the very best of the energy that they can afford. That's an important factor for us too. So I'll stop sharing and I'm going to hand back over to you, Jacob. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul. And yeah, so that one-line purpose of why we are doing this, we want to decarbonize New Zealand's energy future. And Orion, as an energy industry leader, has taken that initiative and come forward and done that. And then each of those themes that Paul talked about today in December, we had a good strategy session where we had invited a diverse talent across the Orion group, across Orion and Kinetics, and those particular areas were actually recommended by them. And for the startups who participated in the program, you can expect support and mentoring from those individuals in Orion and Kinetics who have first-hand experience, knowledge, expertise in those areas. So yeah, thanks to Paul and thanks to the Orion group for their support. So next up, we have Brooke Marshall from Ara Ake. So I'll let Brooke explain more about Ara Ake itself, but I'll introduce Brooke. Brooke brings a lot of expertise. She's trained in IP and she's a trademark specialist. And many of us actually know Brooke from her previous roles, whether across Powerhouse Ventures, which is a tech incubator, or in Callahan Innovation, or in ag research. So she does bring in a lot of expertise personally in a startup commercialization, in investment, in fundraising. So today, Brooke will share a bit about what is Ara Ake's mandate. So Ara Ake is based out of New Plymouth in Taranaki, our New Zealand's energy capital, and why Ara Ake has decided to support this program, and how Brooke, as the head of commercial in her team, so she'll also be an expert in residence who will support the startups through the program, and how Brooke and her team and Ara Ake can support the startups going through. So over to you, Brooke, to give a bit more context about Ara Ake and how you're looking forward to this program.
Thanks, Jacob. I'll just see if I can share my screen with you. Hopefully that's all working. So thank you for the introduction. I'm really, really pleased to be here alongside Orion and the Ministry of Awesome. I guess I should start off by telling you a little bit about Arake, where we came from and what we're here to do. So, Arake was first sort of developed by Venture Taranaki a few years ago, actually, but funding for the organisation was actually announced at the Just Transition Summit way back in May 2019. So after the funding was awarded to the organisation, an establishment project was put together by Venture Taranaki for the next year to set up what the organisation should look like. Arake was eventually launched by the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern in July 2020, and there are 6 team members now on board. So I guess you could say we kind of are in startup phase ourselves. So what are we here to do? Arake's purpose is to support the transition to a low emission energy future for Aotearoa, and our particular impact area is in the development and the commercialisation of new energy innovation. I guess the first question is why do we need Arake? Why is the government funding us as an organisation to be here and to exist? Well, it was recognised that there was a fairly fragmented energy innovation ecosystem within New Zealand. So there were gaps between innovators becoming startups and startups getting demonstration projects into industry. Investors were finding it difficult to connect with innovation opportunities. Researchers were finding it difficult to get their innovations out into the market. So Arake has been created in part to create those connections and to overcome some of those barriers to commercialisation. Since we've been around, we've undertaken some research with Creative HQ to identify what those barriers to commercialisation of new energy innovation are. And we've identified that there are systemic barriers in terms of regulatory hurdles, cultural challenges, corporate challenges that may be a barrier to commercialisation. But then there are some really direct barriers to commercialising new energy innovation, where people don't necessarily know how to commercialise new energy innovation, who to go to for help, who to go to for capital. So all of those little blue arrow areas that you can see in that little map there, those are the areas where Arake can provide support and assistance to help innovation transfer from one of those dots into the next phase on its innovation journey. I guess the next question is, why are we partnering with the Ministry of Awesome and Orion Energy to deliver the Orion Energy Accelerator? Well, we have a number of core objectives as part of our mandate, one of which is to identify opportunities that can be commercialised, to connect and complete the energy innovation ecosystem, and to support new energy innovation, development and commercialisation. So all 3 of those core parts of our charter are aligned with the Orion Energy Accelerator program. How can we help? How can we help startups? Well, I think Marianne actually captured it really, really well in her conversation earlier. It's pretty clear that for startups, there are 3 really big barriers to success. Connections can often be challenging to establish. So those are connections between startups and perhaps industry partners who may be available to help them to demonstrate their technology in a real world environment, for example. Capability, there can be capability gaps where we hear from some investors in the market there's plenty of money there, but we're not quite sure that the innovators have the capability to take the innovation to the next level. And there's also a bit of a capital gap as well. We're hearing from the market that it's okay to get up to maybe $1 million worth of funding for an innovation, but once you get past that, it can be quite challenging. And when you're dealing with deep tech innovation particularly, the dollars mount up pretty quickly. So that can be a barrier to innovation in new energy. So what does this all look like for Arake's support of the Orion Energy Accelerator? Well, I'm really pleased that we're able to announce today that as part of our contribution towards the program, we will be hosting a midpoint workshop in Taranaki, bringing the 11 finalist teams up to New Plymouth for a workshop to help them connect with industry players, to connect with investors, and to validate their opportunities, do some market validation in a real world environment. environment. We're hosting in Taranaki because that is our home, that's our Turanga Waiwai, but it's also the energy centre of New Zealand, as Jacob has really nicely put. There are over 7,000 highly skilled people. It's a world-class energy sector, huge amount of technical capability and expertise, and of course Venture Taranaki, who we value very highly as our partner along this journey. Depending upon who makes it into the final 11, that will sort of help us to guide who we will be connecting those teams with in terms of industry players and investors. But we're also pleased to announce that our partner from the United States, Elemental Accelerator, has agreed to join us as part of this workshop program to provide some global insights and to frame up what global pathways to market look like and what they would be looking for if they were to be investing in a new energy innovation out of New Zealand. From our team ourselves, we'll be providing mentoring and capability building into the program. As Jacob has said, I'll be there as an expert in residence to support the teams on a daily basis. And Dr. Cristiano Marantes, who's our Chief Executive, who was previously Head of Engineering at Vector and GM of Innovation and Technology, will be available as well to the teams as a mentor. So we're really looking forward to participating in the program. I do believe that entrepreneurs hold the key to the climate solution. They have expectations of fast movement. They expect the status quo to be challenged, and they expect change to happen immediately. And as Paul has said, we don't have time to muck around with this challenge. The time is now. So thank you very much for listening. I'm going to pass you back to Jacob.
Thank you, Brooke, and that was a great way to end it. So the time is now. We don't have time to muck around. And a couple of weeks ago, we again had the sort of school strike, and we saw in Christchurch that moving image of a lot of young people gathered around, and the mayor and this other politicians addressing them. So we have a young generation who's demanding solutions. So great to support programs like this. So, well, I'm not introducing anyone. I'm going to do a very brief presentation, trying to answer some of the questions that you might have. Give me a second. Great. So I wanted to answer 3 questions that some of you who would have already registered interest, or some of you are thinking of doing that, will have. So those questions are this: what is an accelerator? I think that word accelerator has been used by all 4 of us quite a bit now. It's a bit of a jargon, but what does it actually mean? And what will an accelerator experience look like, particularly the Orion accelerator experience look like if you are admitted in, for you and for your team? What sort of investment in time are we talking about? What will the experience be? And what can you, what are the outcomes that you can expect at the end of it? And then finally, we've asked all of you to submit an application, a brief answers to some of the questions that we have asked, and a short video. So we look at what are we looking for in that. So what is an accelerator? So the first question, I think, as I ask you this question, I'll have a question back to you. So you don't need to answer it, but are you an entrepreneur with an early stage technology startup? If the answer to that is yes, this accelerator is for you. An accelerator is all about giving those 2 things which Brooke talked about, is connections and in that investment in capability, which startups and innovators might often lack. When you're sitting in isolation developing a solution, you might not have the capability to develop a business case, or you might not have the capability to engage with large partners, or you just might not have the connection to do so. An accelerator aims to bridge that gap or invest in the capability of those founders. So over the next 10 weeks, when from the point that program starts, the accelerator will look at providing that concentrated support, very specialist mentoring, coaching and business support to get your startup from point A to point B, whatever that point B may be. It might be commercialization, it might be entering the market, or it could be investment readiness. Fundamentally, in an accelerator, you will suddenly have access to a lot of industry players like the likes of Orion and RRK and Elemental. So essentially, these are your sort of first customers. And we will go through a very intensive process where we'll focus on validating your product. We look at very rapid and intensive product development, really mapping out your roadmap. And we look at how can we get your startup to a stage where it's investment ready. If not investment ready, at least we need to want to invest in your capability so that whenever your company or your product reaches a stage that you're ready to seek investment, you have a clear understanding of what you need to do. So what does the Ministry of Awesome and Orion and RRK Accelerator look like? It's 10-week, and it's all about it's a mentorship focused program. So fundamentally, we have a core team. A core team is Brooke, Paul, and myself, and 3 of us will essentially act as your advisory board for this those 10 weeks, and we'll lead your program. So we look at a very blended program delivery where some will be physical and some will be virtual. So we'll start off with a kickoff boot camp physical here in Christchurch in Te Haka in our space. And then, as Brooke talked about, we'll have a midway point where we'll meet for over 2 days in New Plymouth. And over these 10 weeks, you'll get a lot of opportunity to be supported by us, by 3 of us, but also you'll hear from experts, you'll hear from speakers who have done this before, who have commercialized startups successfully. We really look at creating opportunities to profile you so that more people are aware about what you're working on, and we'll invest in your capability. Then you'll get access to Orion Group's resource in terms of their expertise and their skill set. We'll get support from our program partners, who I'll talk about later. We'll have a very iterative delivery. So it's a 10-week accelerator. It's not going to be an MBA. It's not going to be a mini MBA program. The delivery of this program, your experience will vary from individual to individual. So if startup A is at a stage where they are ready with their product and their immediate need is only market entry and investment readiness, the program will focus on that. If startup B is more early stage, they don't have a product yet, we'll focus on that. We will look at validating and creating a product roadmap. So it's a very iterative delivery focused on what each startup's needs are. And that's what 3 of us will focus on, along with support from our mentors. And then we'll have the Ministry of Awesome Startup Playbook, which we have perfected after working through over 200 startups over the last couple of years. And the same playbook which we use to support startups quite regularly. We host and support over 27 startups around this space. So along with Orion and RRK, we have some program delivery partners as well. So these are organizations who have the commercial capability to support you in different stages of your journey. So we have Win Williams, the law firm, joining us a legal partner to make sure that what you're putting together is legally robust. We also have ARA Institute of Canterbury, which is the Christchurch-based Polytechnic, the vocational institute, with its capability in engineering, science, and IT, joining as our research partner. What that means, if you're at a stage where you want a product to be developed, we will tap into resources of ARA, whether it is students or the staff here, to bring them on board your team to help you in that R&D process. Or it could even be access to their labs or workshops or facilities to, again, aid your R&D journey. Some key details would be that once you're once we have identified the 11 startups, we'll do a bit of orientation with you. We'll understand what your goals and outcomes are, and then we'll onboard you to the program. You'll be requested to participate in a day-long kickoff bootcamp here in Christchurch, where we'll focus on introducing you to all the partners and really start the program. The program itself, we are divided into 10 weekly sprints, where we'll have conversation with each startup team and understand what are the goals and what are the outcomes that you want to drive, and we'll try to break down that into sort of achievable goals over that time period, and then that's what we'll work on top of. You'll have weekly meetings with myself and with the experts in residence, which is Paul and Brooke. You'll have access to a specialist mentoring pool, so it won't just be us. We'll bring together a pool of expert mentors from across the country and some from overseas as well, who bring in their expertise from a business or tech side.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Sorry, can you mute your...
Can you hear me?
Sorry, Kaden, can you mute your speaker? Sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, so you'll have access to the Ministry of Awesome space, which is Te Ohaka. If you are selected into the program over the next 10 weeks, you can actually work from our space. We'll set up an Orion Accelerator corner here in Te Ohaka, and you will see myself, Paul, and Brooke working from here as well. And then we'll have the 2-day mid-program bootcamp happening up in New Plymouth, and finally a demo evening in Christchurch. Demo evening where we'll actually be doing a presentation before a room of invited guests that will cut across industry and all the right partners. So what are the outcomes we are trying to drive? So what is our North Star for us as the program partners? We want to support innovation, which will help this country in its quest towards low emission energy future. We want to support startups in that early stage, who has an idea or a product which can be commercialized in the next 2 years, and aid technology development in areas where New Zealand energy sector is focusing on. The outcomes we want to drive for the startups through the program, we can break it down to 5. We want to help you validate your innovation with the energy industry leaders. So we'll work with Orion and others to make sure what you're building is what the market actually needs. We'll invest in improving your capability as founders. We'll help you in developing a commercialization strategy and roadmap. We'll invest in your capability to raise capital, that investment readiness piece. And finally, we look at how can you as a startup here in New Zealand look wider globally to scale and grow. So ideally, so as you can imagine, we are looking at quite an intensive 10-week program. Solo founders are welcome, but ideally it will be great if you have a team of at least 2 or 3 people. It would be great if you can contribute at least between your team, say 32 to 40 hours for the duration of the program. And that's because you can get the best value out of Ministry of Awesome and our partners and mentors if you spend that much quality time. And we are looking at people in that early stage and who are developing technology solution. And finally, there are some cases where you might not actually own the IP. We actually are looking at companies which, if not fully own the IP, but at least partially own the IP which your technology is based on. That's about my presentation. I hope that covered some questions that you have. And now we'll... sorry, Kathy. Yeah, let me just get to it. Can everyone enable their video so we actually know who we are talking to? Great. Awesome. Now just raise your hands, either actually physically or there is a raise your hand option on Zoom if you want to ask questions. If just try to point your question to any of us if you can, or just we'll go through the panel. So I think we have Kadeen who has a question now. So over to you,
Yeah.
Kadeen. You may just keep it very short though, the question.
My camera's not working.
That's fine.
I came in late to this. So is this program, so is the 10-week program, is this funded? Do we have to pay for our own expenses, and what do we get out of it? I sort of just came in a bit late. Is it funded? Yeah.
I mean, the participation, your participation in the program itself will be free if you are accepted. I mean, you don't have to pay anything to the program. Yeah, and there is an opportunity if you get through the stages, there might be an opportunity to win a cash prize at the end or potential investment at the end. I hope that answered your question.
I'll go one more. Does that include accommodation and food are all paid for while we're attending this course if we're accepted?
Not really, but if the midway bootcamp in New Plymouth, we'll actually pay for one founder's flights, and potentially there'll be some support around accommodation there in New Plymouth. Other than that, it's mostly just virtual.
So what's the total cost of this bootcamp if we were to attend?
There is no cost.
Okay, and also at the end, if our ideas are good enough, what sort of investment will we be looking at?
That will potentially look at depend on where your company is, and yeah, so I cannot comment on that now.
Okay, sweet. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kadeen. Sorry, any other questions?
It's Edwin here. No?
Yes, Edwin. Go on.
You pushed back the submission date. Is that also impacting on the rest of the program, or are the other dates firm?
It is impacting the rest of the program. So with the support from RRK, now we have been able to, so initially it was going to be a 7-week program. So we extended it to a 10-week program with a component in New Plymouth as well. So that has affected the dates. And so we have published the new dates on the website, on the start date, the end date, and the total length as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Edwin.
Kia ora, Jacob.
Kia ora, Milan.
And Brooke, Paul. I'm working on a marine energy project and just about to procure a lot of material for my floating platform. Question I have expired patents, the preliminary patents, and I need to renew those. How would you manage the IP confidentiality in the first instance?
Kia ora, Milan. Firstly, what we always say is, if you're in an opportunity where you're actually publicly sharing about your product, we'll try to say, actually share about what is the problem you're sharing and share about the general details about the product, but without actually revealing what sort of the magic sauce. But the people who you'll actually be engaging with a lot and actually sharing in detail will be our program team itself. So, we will work through confidentiality agreements there.
Thank you. One
and
more.
Brooke, do you want to comment on that? You're the expert, sir.
Oh, no, look, I have nothing further to add. Milan, it just, if you're looking to refile a provisional application, obviously you need to be quite careful, as you've identified. So we'd need to make sure that the right confidentiality arrangements were in place and that any public statements that you made as a component of the program were pretty beige.
Thank you.
Thanks, Milan. Thanks, Brooke.
For the 11 finalists, when does the process start for making application to that, to try to be a finalist? Or is it already done?
The applications are still open. So you can go to our website and actually file the applications right now.
Thank you. Kia ora. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Milan. So just to share again, so the applications are open till 12th of May. So you can, so yeah, I see that my team has shared the website on the chat window. It's orionaccelerator.nz. So applications will close on the midnight of 12th, so 12th of May. So you can put in your applications by 12th of May. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, it's Peter Saunders here.
Sure.
I've got a reasonably advanced situation, I guess you call it. We've been working on it for about 3 years, but we're about to go commercial with one part of what we're doing, but we have we're exploring batteries, and for reasonably large commercial agricultural businesses, and that's kind of a subset of what we're doing, and that will sort of follow on with behind what we're about to commercialize. And I guess is that the sort of thing that would also qualify, and are you able to help with the commercialization of the first stage as well?
Yeah, most certainly. Do apply.
Okay.
Yeah,
I will.
you still qualify as early stage, so I mean,
yeah. Cool.
Thanks, Peter. Yes, Francis.
Hi, I'm Francis. The technology I'm working on is really based in the processing part. So it's not really hardcore energy delivery, but it's about the heat exchangers, the centrifuges, the hydrocyclones and condensers, and trying to make them more efficient. I'm just wondering if that sits in the areas that you're interested in. I'm not sure if it does.
I'll definitely encourage you to apply, and I'll request Paul to come in as well on that.
I think one of the questions I might be asking in that scenario is, does it help others decarbonize, or would it lead us to a lower carbon economy in the future? And if you think that's where your work is headed, then that may well be a good fit.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I have a question on chat because someone is, Andrew is in a shared office, but there was a question on how he has already submitted his application. So what options do I have to change my application? If you just get in touch with our team, just shoot a mail to info@orionaccelerator.nz, and we can probably help. And Tree, do you want to answer that question? Whether I can see you.
Yes. So if you go to your application page, there should be a button on the top right corner that says edit, and you need to make your edit just before the deadline. So, but there is an option for you to edit your application.
Sure.
Well, if I could, I don't have my screen up now, but feel free to get in touch at info@orionaccelerator.nz, and I can definitely guide you through the process.
Thanks, Tree. And yeah, Tree's our marketing manager, so he's the man behind all the amazing content you might have seen. Other questions? Yes, Dean?
Yeah, my own situation, contemplating a small subdivision on some land that I own, and looking at rooftop solar and small subdivision-sized energy storage options like batteries. Is that something that would fit into this, or you're more looking for technological technologies rather than sort of that kind of thing?
I'll let Paul answer that again, and I can feed in.
I think if I was in that scenario, the question I might be asking myself is, first of all, is there something that there's a level of innovation about the way you're doing that?
Yep.
And the second question might be, would that level of innovation lead to something that ultimately you might be able to commercialize in the future?
Yeah, I guess the innovation would be that, as far as I'm aware, it's not being done currently. But yeah, I mean, it's in terms of a technology solution, it's probably more of an integration of existing technologies than a technology in itself. Although, yeah, given that I haven't seen exactly what I'm envisaging out there in the marketplace, but yeah, it's not a product that you can put a ring around and say this is what we're going to commercialize. It's more of a system or an approach to small subdivision development.
Thanks, Dean.
The idea that that you might think about what is the innovation to deliver that, and if there's something special in there that is the idea, then that may well be worth exploring.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. And you talk about almost 8 or 9 different types of innovation itself. It doesn't have to be a product innovation. It could be the platform, or it could be delivery, it could be process. So I guess we are looking for something which is scalable, which is repeatable, and that can happen if it's something unique and innovative. So thanks, Dean. But definitely do put in your application and probably spend a bit more time on what approach you might take. And Matthew, you had a question? Yes, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. I'm currently not based in Christchurch, but I'll be happy to relocate for the Accelerator program. Will that work against my application?
No, we are open. It's a national program. We are open to applications across the country. Now, I'm supposed to encourage, we are supported by our economic development agency as an organization. So if I'm supposed to encourage anyone who want to move to Christchurch, please do if you want to. But yeah, if you want to locate yourself for the duration of those 10 weeks, you can definitely get great value. But that wouldn't be a stumbling block or a limitation in any way.
Okay, thank you.
And let me just ask a question about that. If you were asking, Matthew, because you felt because it was about Orion's regional focus, the answer is definitely not. So, right. Yes, we're a regional business, but we're about how to build, a better ecosystem for all of us. So, don't be thinking it's because we're going to choose local people because it's a local thing. It is not.
Great, thanks, Paul. That clarifies that. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. That was a good question. Yeah. So don't be limited because, and yeah, we could end up if in the terms of strength, and we are just going to be guided by the strength of application and the fit with the Orion strategy and the fit with what we are looking for. So even if it could be that all 11 are not from Christchurch, so it really depends on the strength of those applications and that fit. So please don't let that limit you in any way. But that said,
look, I think if we tuned out the end of it and there was something that was, absolutely compelling that 29 EDBs across the country picked it up like that, you go, that was a good thing.
But on a practical sense, Paul, myself, and Brooke are all based here. So there is always value in actually working with people, face to face. So if you're in a situation which you can do that, please do. Otherwise, we'll make it work through Zoom.
Yeah.
And there are 2-3 occasions where we actually physically meet. The launch boot camp that one day, the midway point where we'll be together for 2 days. The rest we'll be having weekly meetings on Zoom, collectively as a team with all the 11 startups, but individual meetings as well. Any other questions?
Yeah, Jacob, it's Pete Saunders here again. Paul, is it possible to come and talk to you? I've got a bit of a Callahan problem. I wouldn't mind bouncing off you prior to all of this. Is that a possibility?
Sure. Yep. I'm also happy to just join up online if it makes it easier.
Oh, I live 5 minutes away from Orion, so
sure,
it's easy enough to jump on.
Just do you have my contact details?
No, I don't. But
okay, if anybody wants to ring me, I'll just put the number in the chat here in a minute, and perfect. You just ring me.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Not all straight after this. I want to take all those calls.
I'll call tomorrow. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul. That was a very generous offer. Other questions? Yes, Milan, again, you had a question? Yeah, go for it. Yeah. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. One for Brooke, I think, in her presentation, had TRL 8-9, iwi and communities. Could you explain that one a little more? Thank you, Brooke.
Okay, so a TRL is a technology readiness level. So it's a measure of how advanced your technology is and how close it is to market, starting from TRL 0, which is just an idea, to TRL 9 being a product or service that's actually in market and generating some revenue. So what we're expecting is that if we are able to engage with iwi and communities, it will be at a point where a product can be demonstrated and be of value to iwi and communities as a customer or end user of those technologies. It's not to say that iwi and communities can't be innovators as well. It's just saying that if they are a pathway to market, if there's a technology that meets their specific needs, it would probably be at that point where it's actually useful.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Milan. Thanks, Brooke. Any other last questions before we close?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Sure, go for it.
So I'm also in marine energy development, and I've come up with an idea concept, and I was wondering, do you guys have any computer simulation programs where I could run sort of my design of a generator I've created and sort of get a rough estimate of the power output that it would generate? Does that make sense?
It will probably be something we'll have to investigate after understanding where you are coming from and what specific requirements that you have.
I just want to run my idea through a computer simulation program. Is that something you can provide and get a rough estimate of how much power it will generate?
I'll be honest, not stuck. It's not something I can answer now. Again, it's probably when you get into the program, understand your requirements better, and we can work with our partners and see if we can support you.
Okay.
Cool.
Do you work on many computer simulations and 3D mapping and that sort of stuff?
Sure, we can. We have Ara as a research partner, and sometimes that's what we do when we get students on certain projects, and we scope out requirements, and they go and run simulations, or they go and develop things for us. So that potentially be an option. But yeah.
Okay. So thank you.
Thanks, Gadin. Sorry, anyone else?
Yeah.
Go for it, Alice.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, since Orion, there's one about EV and how cars run on battery. Like, you can get the right one. I think it's that. But on a scale, how large are they willing to like alter or change or like fit in your ideas onto EV vehicles and stuff? I mean, EV vehicles. Like, is it scalable? Is it just on a small scale innovation, or can it be like change the whole dynamic of a car? Or, yeah, is that clear?
I think if I understand the question, I think you're asking to what extent could the idea or innovation you have change something like potentially a whole industry? Is that?
Yeah, yes, but you're on the right track. I think it's that.
Look, I think if your idea was in the Accelerator program and had generated a large-scale industry shift that aligned with things like, for example, powering a low-carbon economy, which is where your EVs might be, then, to be honest, I think we'd be all pretty excited about that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. Alice is one of our students from ARA, so Thanks, Aaron. Any other questions? Yes, Sam.
Yeah, hi. I'm wondering about what status a team that's applying might be in terms of actually planning to submit. That might potentially just or complicate going through the program.
So what you're saying is that you have a product which is under development, early stage, and for parts of it, you're partnering with another organization for that R&D itself.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
And an overseas organization.
Overseas organization.
Yeah.
But so I mean, the only the criteria which can affect that is that, hey, if it that in a way that your product now, you still retain significant ownership, or you might be working on a contractual sort of basis.
The partnership is essentially to allow one of the building blocks, but yeah, a brick doesn't make a house. So it's enabling volume of bricks, if you like, through that partnership, but it's not core IP for the ultimate technological solution.
Yeah. So the team which is participating in the accelerator, if you still have significant IP, significant ownership, yeah, we don't see a problem. Okay. In terms of participation. The one reason why that criteria is because if, say, we have a team, say, from a university, the university owns majority of the the IP, and it's just a researcher, we might not have the same drive. So that's the only reason we put that criteria for. But yeah, Brooke, do you want to add anything to that? Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam. Any other questions? Cool. Thanks, everyone. If that's the case, we can. If there are no other questions, I'll just go ahead and close the evening. So thanks to Marion for initially talking more about Ministry of Awesome and how you can actually leverage a program like this. Thanks to Paul for sharing the Orion strategy with us and talking about why they are driving this program and shedding some light on what areas is Orion actually looking for innovation in. And thanks to Brooke and talking about how they can support. And yeah, it's quite exciting to see a large organization like Orion putting their weight behind a program like this and supporting startups, which we don't see a lot in New Zealand. So really kudos to the Orion leadership team for doing this, and to RRK as well. And thanks to everyone who has turned up today here on Zoom or on Facebook. This video has been recorded, so we'll post that onto our website so that anyone else can look through. I'll just share the timeline again so that everyone is aware. So we close on the 22nd of March. For applications, please just go to the orionaccelerator.nz website, and we have a platform where you can fill in your questions, and you have to record and upload a very short video, and then we will announce the participants on 26th of May, and we'll start the program on 16th of June. So we'll announce on 26th, and between the 26th and 16th, we'll work on onboarding you. And then from 16th till about 20th, we'll work together and have a final presentation on 9th of September. So once you are selected, you are with us for a very long time. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to all the speakers today. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. And we are looking forward to seeing all your applications. Thank you.